Hello, 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 everyone, and a huge thank you to everyone joining us today. This is a Lead Dev online panel discussion created in partnership with Harness. The discussion will last about 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over to the Lead Dev Slack to answer some of your questions in the hashtag panel Q&A channel. For those joining us live, you have the link to the Lead Dev Slack in your resources. It's really a great community of engineering leaders supporting and learning from each other, so I recommend that. And we have loads of questions because there's a lot going on, but you, the live joiners, hopefully have questions as well. I encourage you to ask Q&A, use that feature in Zoom, click Q&A and ask questions throughout. And if we again, don't finish them all. We'll continue them in Slack, but we really welcome your questions live. So Gartner predicts that 50% of all IT spending by next year, like in 6 months, will be on AI. This may come as a shock, but most companies don't know what they're spending money on. They may not know how much they're spending, and they really don't know what if they have an ROI on their AI. So you may be in a different state than others, but that's what we're talking about today. It's a bit of the Wild Wild West, and yet 50% of the IT spend, that is a wild number. So as we are going to introduce our esteemed panelists, I did want to launch a poll that we'll discuss afterwards. But the idea is honestly, how confident are you that your AI investments are paying off? And then we have different ranges, like you're very confident, got the data, back it up, cautiously optimistic, a gut feeling, it seems pretty good, genuinely do not know, and oh, we know, but it's not the return on investment that we wanted. So I'm going to leave that up to the side. If it's a little squished, you can stretch it out to read the entire description. And in the meantime, I would ask our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. Corey, go first, please.
Sure. Hi, Corey Ladislaw. I am currently head of engineering at Just Eat Takeaway. I'm nearing 20 years in tech. I've done a wide variety of technologies and types of businesses, but the last 4 years I've been focusing pretty heavily on AI. I built a Gen AI lab at one of the consulting firms I was director at. I helped Trainline transition from SEO to GEO and make $1 million a week in inbound high intent traffic, while also helping them build all the models that did the personalization for both growth and monetization. And now at Just Eat, and I'll dive into that a little bit further, I've been looking at the entire SDLC and how do we speed up engineering and find all those, what I call human gates and constraints, and try and design around them. So that's me.
Okay, thank you so much. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron McTavish, Senior Director of Engineering at Multiverse. Multiverse is an upskilling platform. We're one of the largest apprenticeship providers here in the UK, specializing in AI, data, and software engineering. And so this topic of AI and the return on investment of it is near and dear to my heart, both as an engineering leader, as many of you are, and making sure that we're getting our own return on investment of it. But also it's core to the products that we're building. We're building an upskilling platform to help other companies actually see the ROI. So I am living and breathing this every day, wearing both my hats. So very excited to discuss this topic.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And Martin, please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Martin Reynolds. I'm Field CTO at Harness. I'm just going to cover the current. I've been in IT for more than 30 years. I know there's a lot to cover in that time. Right now, though, there is, focusing on a few things as always, working with enterprises to kind of improve their software delivery, but also been quite a bit of a focus on this return on investment of AI and how you measure it and how you value it against outcomes, etc. So super interested for the topic today. Want to see more.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm Jennifer Higgins. I'm a technology journalist and host, and a lot around developer productivity the last few years. So I am not shocked by the results that I'm going to read out right now from the poll, but the question was, for those that are joining later, how confident, honestly, are you that your AI investments are paying off? Big old goose egg for very confident. We've got the data to back it up. I appreciate your honesty. We're early in this, so that's fair. We've got about a quarter of people are cautiously optimistic. There's some signals, but no hard proof. We've got almost half saying it's a gut feeling more than a measurement, which is not a measurement, but a gut feeling. And then we've got an honest bunch at about 24% saying they're genuinely unsure if their AI has an return on investment and they haven't really figured out how to measure it. Hopefully we'll help you out today. And then one brave soul said, oh, we know, but it doesn't look good. So that is where we are right now. Hopefully you will have some tactics by the end of this call or some inspiration that maybe by next quarter, you'll have a little more insight. So thank you for that. Now, we really want to hear how 3 very different companies are doing with their AI measurement and where they stand. So Corey, do you want to talk first about where you all are in this journey?
Sure. Yeah, so the last 2 businesses I've worked at, both Trainline here and Jet, where I'm at now, they are very old platforms. So Trainline's like 30 years old, and Just Eat Takeaway is closer to 20, I think. But they have had really long-standing platforms. So a lot of times executives are very excited to put AI into these places, and they're expecting a return on investment, right? But like there is a lot of cruft that slows us down, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So when I started at Just Eat Takeaway, I had a little bit more capacity than I was expecting. So I focused really heavily on AI because it's been a passion of mine for a while, and I did have the space. So I originally started out by mapping the entire SDLC in the business. So how do we go from ideas all the way to production, and trying to find all the places where you could accelerate with AI versus it needs to be a human gate, or it needs to be fully manual, or it could be fully automated. And when I did that exercise at Trainline, it was almost all I had brains and humans at a computer as my little emoji, and most of them were there because in their particular environment, most of them were not ready at that stage, and this was a year and a half ago, so I'm sure things have changed quite a bit since then. And then I did the same exercise here at Just Eat, and we had a lot more access to tooling than I did during my time at Trainline. So there was a lot more that I could either automate or at least kind of like haltingly automate parts of it and kind of build a workflow that still had a bunch of human intervention in it. So I went from the very meta, because there is another area of the business that I'm not running that is doing developer experience and how do we actually do this, and that's their official remit in the platform team. I'm kind of looking at it from more of the meta outside view of, okay, cool, if I want to go from idea through production. And that was good, but it was still a little bit abstract. I did map out what tools people had created because we had a bunch of agent creation platforms and stuff like that. But then I wanted to go deeper into the my team's actual experience of it. And at first I had encouraged my tech managers to figure out how to build agent first workflows. But with the demands of the day-to-day, didn't really end up having the time to do that. So I kind of went on my own expedition to get my hands dirty again, which was really fun. I built a harness outside of work. So an agent harness, if you're not familiar with it, is where you create a bunch of skills and workflows and things like that and make it so that they work together to build software. So my harness uses several concepts of best engineering practice, things like test-driven development. It uses spec-driven development and BDD sort of tests and stuff in there. And the way I've structured it for my own personal one is just build stuff as quick as possible. So PRs they're reviewed by agents, but they're just merged and I don't care. So this is my own personal project where I'm building a Kotlin multi-platform app. Inside Jet, obviously, I need to be a lot more, reasoned and make sure that these things won't fall down in production. So it's definitely a different workflow. So what I did is extracted my harness into the principles that I built into it and kind of inflated it inside Jet, and then paired with people across the business to understand their workflows, the different systems they're connecting to, and then fine-tuned it for Jet. So I worked with a tech manager, I worked with a PM, I worked with a QE, and these were like 4-hour sessions where I would sit and talk to them, and we would kind of pair, and I would be hands-on keyboard, and I'd take the transcript of the talk and then extract all the interesting bits and then turn that into skills and whatever else. So I was doing that for a while, and now my work is picked up, so I don't have that capability anymore. And luckily I hired an EM, so she is now leading a small team to then flesh it out to do similar things. We've now worked with security across the business to shift security checking all the way into the requirements phase. We do also then have agents spin up and check it as we're going, but the idea is to shift everything super left as much as possible. So one of the things we do is like a trio. That's if you're defining a project, it's like, what are the documents you already have? So you might give it either just an idea or a PRD or ADRs that already exist, and then it'll have an adversarial flow where it probes and finds all the gaps. And I'm imagining this is sitting down with a PM and the tech manager, maybe an architect, and sitting through and answering those sorts of questions to get really clear on what you're building. It is quite waterfall, really, but it also is a very quick waterfall. So I'm not a huge proponent of waterfall in general, but I like the idea of getting quite clear on what you're building. Now, I don't mind the idea of figure it out as you go along as well. My business is not ready for that, but maybe one day. But right now, it's very much be very clear on what you're building, and then build it with the best software engineering practices in mind, and then you have something at the end of it. Review is still an unsolved problem, review and testing. We're at this point almost through the process of shipping our first feature that we've fed through it. And I haven't talked about the ROI, but we have been putting metrics and all sorts of monitoring and stuff in there along the way. But yeah, so hopefully soon we'll know exactly how long it takes to build something. But I built a case study that's like, here's the 20 human gates I hit along the way, and this is why it took a while, because people are like, well, why haven't we shipped something? It's like, well, because your culture and your code base is not ready for this yet. I'm helping you get there, but it's not ready yet. But yeah, just a quick point on ROI. I would say I don't think we have a good view of like traditional software ROI either, because total cost of ownership and like how much you're going to pay maintenance costs year over year. Like at previous businesses, they're like, well, let's go chase this shiny thing over here. I didn't think about the year it took to build the first version of it and what it would take now to build another version of it and how much it's going to cost. I'm good with pausing there for now. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope that's okay. Yeah, I think that's quite normal that we're finding, and Dora definitely found that AI is an amplifier of everything. So the engineering best practices and measurements needed to be in place anyway. And if you don't have them, you can't do more. Thank you so much for sharing so much about Just Eat Takeaway. Aaron, tell us about Multiverse more. Where are you now and what are you measuring?
Yeah, so I've been at Multiverse for not quite a year. So this journey for the company into leveraging AI internally started a little bit before I joined. But it was a whole company investment from the CEO on down that everybody was going to start to experiment, start to explore. We're going to invest heavily on learning and development, bringing in people who were at the forefront of leveraging AI across the various job families. So not just in software engineering or even in R&D, but across the business, finance, HR, go-to-market, operations, you name it. And so, once we had done that experimentation phase, everybody kind of playing with it on the side and a little chat interface, and then slowly building up skills and eventually building up into harnesses. We've now gone from making it an exploration and a pure learning and development phase to an expectation. So at Multiverse, late last year, we got rid of our company values and replaced them with operating principles. So instead of beliefs that we want every employee to have, really describe how we work. And one of our 4 operating principles is AI to deliver outcomes. So again, it's not just using AI for AI's sake, but actually using it to deliver some sort of business impact for our customers, for our learners, or for us as multiversers. Be that, increasing revenue, decreasing costs, or mitigating risk. And again, it definitely makes it easier to advocate for the use of AI when your CEO is using it themselves. They understand what a hallucination is because they've experienced it. They have a concept of why evals are important because they understand that the model changed and suddenly what worked yesterday doesn't work today. Definitely makes having those conversations much easier when the whole company is behind it. But now at Multiverse, unlike a year ago, I don't think there's a surface across our entire product experience that hasn't had AI as some part of the software development process. AI is standard in terms of all of our incident response now. Again, both using our AI-based IDEs, be it Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, you name it, or kind of the tools built into your favorite IRM tool. It's just become our standard way of working. So now it's about sharing, it's about leveraging that impact, which has been just a really exciting journey to be a part of.
Fantastic. Thank you both for sharing your experiences. So Martin, where's Harness on this journey?
Wow. That's a good question. No, so I mean, I think I'll start off a little bit where Aaron left off. So, Josie, the founder, CEO for the company, he is very, very AI literate, shall we say. And it is, it is absolutely positively promoted the use of AI throughout the company. Use it to enhance what you do so that you can, do more. And he encourages the experimentation. So I think, and a bit similar, we're using it everywhere across the business, like internally for our customer success portal that's been built using AI, and how we track things like our customer advisory board and the impacts that that's having. All sorts of things have been built out using AI to kind of facilitate that. I mean, when it comes to the SDLC, which is where I think it's really interesting, so it's probably worth noting, and I am going to come back to something Corey said earlier, actually, but it's probably worth noting that the way we build, the way Harness is built, is that while we still apparently considered a startup, even though we're reasonably large at this point, we treat every single product that we build as a startup, and we go through those same funding rounds. So, like a Series A funding, Series B funding, etc. Internally for those products, that's how they get investment. So the reason I bring that up is because that ties very much to, I have this much investments and I need to get this much outcomes, and how much of my investments am I spending on people versus AI versus infrastructure is actually all very important, because you need to be able to show the progression. So I think right now, we have fairly good visibility across, and for about the past month and a half, maybe a little bit longer, we've actually been running software that actually tells us, hey, this Jira ticket took this amount of time, used this many tokens. So this, it cost $4,257 in tokens for this particular feature to be built. But then we can track that also the other way in terms of, how much is the infrastructure that's running on costing, etc. But it's really saying, hey, this was the investment in that feature, and it's been built, and it's been secured, and it's been deployed, and then it's been released, and then we want to collect the experimentation data on the other end to see if the impact of that was positive, and then feed that all the way back to the front to be able to say, this is actually, this was a good investment or a bad investment. The interesting thing is one of the things that it's really driven is, hey, why are you using Model A for this? And why would you use Model B? And do you get the same outcome? And why did you use that frontier model for fixing that bug? And it made it very interesting, because when you suddenly have the visibility and a 3-line bug fix costs you $250, I don't think that's true, but when you have that kind of visibility, it makes it super interesting to, say, was that the right way to do it, or would it actually have been better just for an engineer to do that three-line fix and and the time and everything else associated to it. So it is super interesting. And getting that visibility has been really interesting. I mean, at Harness, we literally use all of our own tools to build all of our own stuff, and we use them for quite a long time before we share them with anybody else, if that makes sense. Partly, obviously, that's just good practice, and we find a lot of the bugs because we're all developers, inside of Harness too. But also it has allowed us to kind of see some of that visibility early and help us try and work out how to get to that ROI.
Absolutely. Thank you, all three of you, for providing like different experiences on the journey, but certainly at larger companies that are dealing with real live problems. I have to jump right in because Andy was probably the earliest question I've ever gotten on this, so I'm very excited. And I definitely want to ask Andy's questions right away. With such big investment into AI, how do we calculate the opportunity cost of ignoring other technologies and approaches? And I would add to that, are there other technologies and approaches that are not AI?
I would like to respond to that initially because honestly, I feel it's really difficult to measure a negative. Hey, what did we miss by not doing X? I think the only way you can measure that is say, hey, I think there's this other approach to doing it, and this is what I think the return on investment would be, because even generally before you invest in something, you normally at least have a goal of where you want to get to in terms of, your ROI. So I think calculating negative ROI is really quite difficult. What did I miss? If that makes sense. Whereas actually saying, hey, I think this is a great way to do it. This is what the investment is, and this is what the outcome's going to be. And then compare that to, what you think you're getting out of any specific AI investments that you're doing. That's how you can then, not miss those opportunities if they're actually going to be better or more effective or more efficient. On the flip side, you're not sort of, it's just sort of really difficult to do it that other way around. What did I miss? Because you have to do the same sort of, at least some of that due diligence to say, what is the impact of this going to be and what's my outcomes going to be at the other end?
I will say also that a lot of the things that you're going to do to enable AI and agents to work better in your organization is, to Jennifer's point, like the things you should be doing anyway. And if AI at this moment in time isn't ready to accelerate what you've got, then there's some foundational work that you need to do. So you could focus on that, which is everybody loves adding more of the tests and the documentation, all that sort of stuff that helps everyone on board. So focus there first, and then you could use a lot more better measurement tools to figure out, okay, well, should we be using this model or pursue this, not pursue that, etc.
But I would just add, yeah, I was just going to add to that, but say that you're doing it to enable AI, because that's where the budget is right now. So whenever possible, tie it back to AI to do all the best engineering practices you want it to.
Yeah, I'm calling it agentic discovery. So that's how I'm internally.
Okay, nice. I like that. I was about to say it was a shameless plug, but it was direct that I'm going to do, but it was a directly relating to what was being said, which is I literally just recorded a talk for PlatformCon, which is in a few weeks, where I was saying, actually, if you want to get the best out of AI in your SDLC, you need to have really good foundations. And if you've built the good foundations, that's where you get the real uplift and the multiplier out of AI, because you've got a good solid foundation that you're building on. And that's where the maturity model comes in, really, of saying get great foundations and then start using AI assistants and then full agentic automation. That's the route, rather than just bolting it onto something that's not ready. To ask to your point, Corey, I think that's I 100% behind that principle.
Aaron?
No, I totally agree with my colleagues. I would say one thing that AI has definitely changed, at least in my experience in Multiverse and elsewhere, is that the speed at which we can build and we can iterate and get feedback on is so much faster. So again, the cost of doing a platform migration is much lower. Again, if you've got the good practices in place, you start off your new iteration of your platform, of your service, with those good practices, again, that we should be using anyway. And then you can build it out, test it, whether you want to do canary testing, A/B testing, whether you want to do some sort of closed beta. You can get it out very quickly, where normally it would take you years, potentially 6 months if you're lucky, to get the beginning of your next platform operational and start seeing production traffic on it. You can now do it in days or weeks in some cases. And so while still a lot of those kind of architectural patterns about migration, strangler fig and all the rest of that, again, still apply, but the time to do the full cycle, to do the feedback loop is so much less, as is the investment to do it. That absolutely do the agentic archaeology, mine all that rich context that you've built up over the years and all of the reasons why you built the product the way you built it. But treat your current platform, your current system, as that initial bank of context that you can bring into and say, well, this is my ambitions for the new platform. Treat this old platform over here as context, but this is the direction we're heading. Let's go. And it's amazing how fast you can suddenly build, and then again get into a code base that is actually designed from the get-go, both for human and AI working together.
Yeah, it's like definitely a difficult question for businesses right now. Do you go for the just build it alongside, run them both for a while, and then kill the old one? But I think for something like Just Eat Takeaway and Trainline, like that would be an untenable decision, potentially. I don't know, just because like they've been running so long, they've been, making money, but also very stable and getting more stable over time, right? So it's like, but I think that there's a lot of people who, like us included, say, oh, you just got to get your foundations right and then you could totally scale. But there's not a lot of content out there, and I haven't seen a lot of people talking about how do I take this really terrible brown field place and then turn it into something that's lovely and good for agents to do. I have a theory that you could either build one alongside, maybe do some like almost like an MCP Strangler fig over the whole platform, and then just build the new interfaces you want, or extract all the specs essentially from that context, like you were saying, and then use that to build something else. Yeah, I haven't figured out which approach I would want to take. I have a smaller domain inside Jet, so I might be able to do it inside like groceries versus the entire platform, right?
Okay. A great audience question is, how do you know whether your foundations are yet good enough? And this is where I think that like that vibe, that feel, asking your developers if they feel it is valid, that we talked about. Well, we kind of are spitballing, or I know they're eager to get AI and you're going to do it whether you're ready or not. I think at the speed of the industry, but how do you know whether your foundations are good enough yet?
Well, if it keeps falling down, and I do think if you're asking that question, it's probably not there yet. But yeah, I think so. One of the people I was talking to at Lead Dev yesterday was talking about how they created like an AI readiness dashboard. Now, I don't think theirs is like a fully fleshed out framework yet, because they were doing kind of a chat with Claude to figure it out. But I think maybe Martin has something like that. But like having an idea of how agent ready the aspects you have already are, like the documentation good, does it have like an explainer of what these things do and all these different modules and all that. Right now we also have a service discovery problem as well, because we've got tons of microservices all over the place. So then just finding out the right place to go first, and then once you get there, oh, what does this repo do?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I feel like I have multiple answers to this question, if that makes sense, because I think some of it kind of leads into the platform engineering type conversation, because actually I think if you have a good platform engineering discipline and platform engineering as a product rather than platform engineering as a project, if that makes sense, not just lots of tools stuck together, but something that actually is opinionated and governed and all the rest of it. I think if you have that and you can, that path to production works, 99 times out of 100, and it's reliable and repeatable, you're probably more prepared than somebody that has, 100 or 200 or 300 or 1,000 different ways of getting their code from, from PR to production. So I think there's that. I do love the mapping exercise that was talked about earlier, because I think quite often, if you've got a diagram of what you think your deployment process is, it's probably wrong. It's That's the problem. If it was made probably even more than 6 months ago, it's probably changed and it's probably not up to date. So there is that side of it. But I think mapping it and understanding where where the human is in that, and where the checks are, and where the out of process stuff happens, because you want it to be. I'm not saying that you should necessarily always have human entirely out the loop, but there's a lot you can do to automate and automatically govern whether the right things have been done or not. So, I think there is assessments, where you can do it. I could also do a shameless plug for our Engineering X maturity model, which is free in our Engineering X community. But essentially some of it's just going to be, hey, do I have a clear path to production? What is the amount of human interaction that's there? Because you know what? Anything that you think is a little bit of a bottleneck now, when you apply AI to it, it's going to become 10 times that. So if it's a small bottleneck today, it's going to be a huge bottleneck if you increase the throughput by 5 or 10x or whatever it is.
Margarita asks, what is the most impactful yet least obvious change you made to the software delivery lifecycle in terms of sequencing or time allocation across stages?
I will say, that makes it sound like that the SDLC is linear, and I would say if you've got a linear SDLC right now, then there's probably stuff you can do that can be done in parallel, and which would be, not necessarily a direct change to it, but would actually be a great way of optimizing it and improving it. But aside from that, I think it's governance in your delivery, as in, hey, here's the safe path and the right way to do it, because if you're sticking to all those rules, that stops a lot of the human interaction that slows down that journey from code to production.
Yeah. So one of the things I did with my harness that I haven't really been able to use effectively at Jet, unfortunately, but the idea of an architect that always is looking ahead and working on the next thing. So you can do it if you have a really big feature where they're looking at different milestones and then designing the next feature out. But that's one area that to me was could really help speed up some of that parallelization and stuff. But things I've actually done at Jet, I agree around the governance and moving security earlier into the life cycle. So we were able to find just basically engineers don't really want to do secure coding most of the time. I find like you kind of have to really train them up on that if they're not really hot on that sort of stuff. So it kind of takes some of that away and just bakes it into the way that the agents build. So that's one of the things that I think has brought a lot of value in the way that we're building at Jet.
Okay. Please go, Aaron. Go.
Oh, no, I would second that around governance, around security. Same could be true of accessibility and building with that in mind. Building with product analytics from day one, instead of realizing it afterwards you missed a bunch. Again, this is where having AI tools that isn't about an engineer trying to remember a laundry list of 100 different factors and facets that they need to look at the code for, or have this absolutely massive definition of ready and definition of done on every ticket. They can focus on the higher order challenges of the problem space that they're working in, and let the AI handle looking at it through all these different lenses. But in terms of getting that return on investment on the SOC, I honestly wouldn't look at just focusing on one area. To really start to see the adoption, you've got to find what works for individuals. And as engineers, we're rather picky when it comes to technology. We're very skeptical about things. And it's until we find that right first use case for us, that all of a sudden we go super, super deep on a particular new technology. And what that is and what that speaks to each engineer in your team, it's going to be different. So at some point, you do need to set certain standards and kind of do broad brush evolutions of your SDLC. But if you're just getting started, I would encourage and find a way to do that exploration and that inspiration and be a bit more open about it. It may be about writing new code. It may be about debugging or incident response. Who doesn't love it when they can drop a whole stack trace into an LLM and suddenly realize, oh, that was the frame that was going wrong, or being able to pull across, GitHub's MCP, Datadog's MCP, your linear backlog or what have you, and be able to actually trace back to the root cause. So you're not just fixing and mitigating a live problem, but you're actually addressing the root cause straight from the beginning. And so finding that first nugget, that first opportunity that really makes it click. And then ultimately, as people start to use it and explore, you'll see improvement across the SDLC. It won't be about just one area anymore.
Absolutely. And always ask your developers. They tend to know what's slowing them down. So it will be likely the same thing that's slowing down the agents at a greater bottleneck speed.
Speaking of, though, like I did something I saw at the Claude. They had a whole conference recently, but their Spotify, I think it was talking about how they're having their agents vent. So anytime they run into something that has annoyed them, the agents, they put it in a Slack channel, and there's a bot in there that triages them and then goes and fix that thing. So then it's like there's a cycle of fixing all the tiny annoyances in a code base, which I thought was a really interesting idea.
Teaching your harness to learn is incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just because for the timestamp of those that aren't joining us live, it's June 4th. I think the last 2 weeks have seen a lot of headlines where suddenly the prices are going up. And we've learned, feel like May was the month where we were all talking about token maxing. And in general, we did have a question that, so I will approach this to Martin first. Someone had specifically asked, it's difficult to trace all the token spendings back to a specific ticket. But in general, I do want to talk about the physical cost of AI and how you can measure it, and back to if it's leading to any return on investment.
Okay. I will answer the question very quickly and then move on to the broader question. So essentially, the mechanism uses an on-machine developer agent, essentially, that sits there and collects that. So actually what you get, if you like, is the data chain sort of runs from prompt to token spend to commit to PR to deploy to production to outcomes, if that makes sense. So that's how we're collecting it, but it's collecting it because it can see what the prompt is, and we can collect the metrics from Claude or Copilot or whatever and understand what that token spend is for the prompts that are being done as part of working on that thing. So, I think that is the shortest description of that, and it's obviously then got the per developer attribution in terms of the token spend and everything else. So you kind of get that thing. I think expanding that out though to the actual ROI, the larger ROI question that you were asking, which is where I think it's tying the investment to the outcome is the trick, right? This is what I'm investing in, and this is what I'm getting out. And I think that's sometimes quite hard because there is a tendency to go for the technical outcome. So if you're suddenly using, AI coding, and you're saying, hey, I'm now generating, I'm completing 20 times the number of features that I was completing previously, right? So the number of features we're building in our product has gone up 20-fold. Amazing. But I think unless you're actually collecting the right data at the other end, you're not going to get the real ROI, because that's, I can't remember where the stat's from, but there's a stat that basically says, 20% of the features and stuff we write actually makes things worse. 60% doesn't move the needle either way for the customer. So it doesn't make it worse, but doesn't make it better. And only 20% actually has a positive impact. That means that 80% of the code that is being shipped is not necessarily moving the needle either way, positively or negatively. So, just multiplying the amount of code doesn't necessarily improve that. You just have now more things that are that are not moving the needle. And so I think, you need to have that extra data post deployment, because at the point at which you deploy a new feature, that's your hypothesis. My hypothesis is we built this thing and I've deployed it and now customers are going to use it. So you also need to track beyond the fact that a feature was built and deployed. You need to track how it was adopted, how it was used, whether it's had a positive or negative impact on the outcomes that matter to your business. And that's going to be different for every single business. But you need to connect all of those things and then feed it back so that you're building the things or improving the things that are having a positive impact, and maybe even dropping the things from your time and AI investment the other way. So I know it's a very SDLC focused answer, but I think the rule applies regardless. If I'm using AI for this, there's a kind of physical metrics, but what's the actual outcome, the positive or negative outcome that's happened, and was it worth the spend that we put in it?
What else do we have on there? Because cost matters, or it should, in times of tightening staff budgets.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Martin.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree with you. Like, what we should be obsessing over as a business is it delivering that outcome? Those are the product metrics, the same product metrics you had 2 years ago, and then you iterated on for last year's, annual strategy or OKRs, or the ones you've iterated on again for this year's. Those business metrics, those product metrics, those are the ones you should still be building for, still be obsessing over, and not solely obsess over the how did you achieve it. Yes, that is important. You do need to measure those aspects too. But the thing that actually needs to drive the work is those business and product outcomes. So just make sure that those are at the forefront of your decision making. Those are what you're actually optimizing for. Track the rest, so that way you can iterate and that way you can learn. But definitely focus on those business outcomes.
Yeah, I think there's been a really nice shift from like token maxing, which I thought always was like lines of code counting BS sort of stuff. It just never made sense to me why. Like, it is important to use the tools and then try and see what you can do with them. And it might be really expensive at the outset, and that's fine to max at first while you're experimenting. But like, should definitely be much more like value maxing and focused on outcomes is what we keep talking about. Like, but we definitely need to be focused on what it drives in the end. And I saw that I think it was like this last week, Amazon dropped their token maxing leaderboard because people were just gaming it and stuff, because there's first incentives, which just means like, spend more money please. And it's like,
it's a terrible incentive. I'm sorry, but it is just such a terrible incentive. It's like saying, I know I run real estate. I sell real estate. I sell houses for a living. But what I'm going to reward people on is how much they drive going from appointment to appointment, not on how many houses they sell. It's like so disconnected from the outcomes that the businesses really want.
Yeah.
It's wild, and also could be a sign of people that are being inefficient. Like, maybe you want to know this knowledge, but not for the right reasons, because just like lines of code was never a good measuring of developer productivity, it's a great measurement of complexity of your code, and one you should definitely be tracking while you're tracking your AI spend and everything else around AI. So we have had a wonderful audience with wonderful guests. So thank you, Martin, Corey, and Aaron. And just to give a teaser, because we're going to head over to the Lead Dev Slack now, you have in our channel, we have questions regarding, companies that aren't SaaS companies, but are shipping to external customers where the traditional DORA feedback loops are slower. How do we measure then? How do you measure your agentic security? Make sure they have the right level of security access. That may not be a direct ROI right now, but it could really affect your ROI in the future. Any metrics in particular to understand speed and quality impacts from AI, talking more about guardrails, including around overspending and how to measure your training and education, and other questions about AI spend and maybe should it be treated differently or not as spend. So we have loads of questions for our esteemed panelists to join us in the panel Q&A Slack. And I also invite everyone, it is an asynchronous community, so even those that didn't join us live, to continue that conversation, talk about your experiences, talk about the lessons learned, because no matter even if you're Anthropic or Spotify or these like super AI companies, you're still new to it. We're all new to it, and let's learn from each other and have a great day, y'all. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you.